It pulls me out.
Sorry again.
That's okay. Yeah, so it pulls me out of the story. So as for where they came from, Duchess I'll talk about in more detail later. But I once I decided to turn, so I'd written a load of Duchess scenes that weren't really a book. Once I decided to turn it into a book, I began to build out around her. And I'd done loads of research into the life that she has, and you know, it's shockingly common, you know, when children become carers and things like that, and so I gave her Robin, who is her center of the center of her world, and is her reason for being, and I gave her her mother, who is struggling, isn't she? I think it's safe to say, you know, she has a tough time and she's not really a parent. And Duchess doesn't really get a childhood. And then from there, it was just building out around her, you know, and turning it into a book. And it took years and years. Yeah. So no, to answer that question, no one I know.
Okay. That's awesome. I love that your your brother tries to claim some of the characters. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's one word for it. Yeah.
So, in every episode of The Lost Jill, I personally love to research about the author. And you, of course, were no exception. I found a really poignant article that I believe you had actually wrote yourself on theguardian.com, which you shared a really personal story about a really traumatic event that you went through, which brought you to writing. So first off, I want to say thank you for sharing that and so much transparency about mental health in that article. It was fantastic. We're always pushing for that on our little tiny platform here. But would you mind sharing a little bit of the story on how you became to be an author?
Yeah, no, of course not. It's kind of the story of where Duchess came from as well, so it fits in with the first question. So I was back when I was a teenager, I was not great at school. I was my parents would probably say that I didn't apply myself, is the nicest way of putting it, which was like parent code, isn't it? For I should try harder, I should be doing better. I was more interested in going out with my friends and drinking and things like that. And so the night before my economics exam, I went out and got really drunk and missed the exam the next day. So it failed, and that kind of put paid to university for me. I could have resat, but nothing really appealed. You know, when you're that age and you're expected to commit to something, you know, and it's like a career that you can't possibly know what it's like, but there's all this pressure to choose something, and I just had no idea, like zero, and nothing really appealed. My friends, like some of them wanted to be doctors and lawyers, and they were already going down that road. And my brother, my annoying brother, I should add, was like an overachiever and got into an amazing university and just knew what he wanted to do. And I was a bit lost, so I just quit school, left school, and decided to do loads of jobs to see what appealed. And so I bounced around. Like I did loads of bar work and sales and things like that. And then I was working as a real estate agent. And I was out dropping leaflets through people's doors quite early one morning in London. And someone came up to me and asked to borrow my cell phone. And being a Londoner, I knew that I was going to get mugged because my friends had been mugged. It's not that unusual. It's a city thing, isn't it? It happens all the time. But I was 19 and full of bravado, and he wasn't very big, so I just said no. And we had a bit of a fight, and I was doing okay, and then he pulled out a kitchen knife, and I remember looking at it, and it was a really big knife. So I thought, he's not going to use it; it's just to scare me. So I didn't run or anything, and then he stabbed me 3 times in the side, and then went to stab me in the chest. This is over a cell phone. And I grabbed his hand and he dropped the knife, and I dropped my phone, and he picked up both and ran off. and I didn't realize I'd been stabbed, because you know when the adrenaline's going, you just don't really feel anything. I thought I was being punched, and then I looked down and I was wearing a white shirt and it was just completely red, and it was yeah, it was bad. So I got back to my car and drove myself to the hospital and just about made it there, because I felt I was going to black out. And then they stitched me back together again, and the consensus was that I was lucky and I'd gotten away with it, you know, and I should feel lucky. And I didn't feel lucky at all. I just felt dreadful, and I didn't know about PTSD. And so my dad and my friends kind of slapped me on the back, and there was kind of a feeling like I should just get on with it. And but I stopped sleeping, because like when I lay down to sleep, I just used to see it over and over, and kind of ran it over in my head and wondered if I could have done something differently. And then I wasn't really eating, and I couldn't read a book, and I couldn't watch TV. And but I kept telling everyone that I was fine, because my parents divorced when I was quite young, and my mum had that. She worked in a bakery in the day and a liquor store in the night, kind of every day, and she always smiled, and I never saw her complain. And she had that tough single mum thing going on. So I just kept my mouth shut and just told them I was fine. And I was drinking a lot and taking drugs and things like that, just, you know, as like an escape. And I began hoarding painkillers, and I was going to take them all. And that day I'd been to the library, and I'd got a book out, kind of a self-help therapy book, and it talked about this technique you can use. It's kind of like a distraction technique, and kind of like taking control of something you had no control over. So it tells you to write down the traumatic incident, and you change the characters involved to fictional characters, and you change the location and the outcome and things like that. And I wrote Duchess. This was 20 years ago when I was 19. I wrote Duchess, and I wrote the bar scene, you know, where her mother Star is playing guitar, and Duchess breaks a bottle and threatens the people that are heckling her. And that got me through it that night. And I went to bed and slept for about 6 hours, which was like a miracle, because I hadn't slept for so long. And then I carried on writing because I felt a bit better. But it wasn't a quick fix, because probably a month later I drove my car off the side of the road and flipped it on its roof, like in spectacular movie star, like stuntman crash, and went to hospital again and got stitched back together again, and have a scar running down my cheek, which you, thanks to Zoom, you probably can't see. So, but it reminds me, you know, every time when I shave in the morning, it's like a reminder of a time when I'd messed up, and I didn't tell my mum, and she thought I'd been drink driving, and she just thought I was an idiot, because that's her default stance with me for most of the time. And so it wasn't a quick fix, but I carried on writing, and I wrote random scenes, not a story. It was never supposed to be a story. I wrote random Duchess scenes, and then a year went by, and I began to think about what next. And just by chance, I picked up a newspaper, and there was an article about a stockbroker, and there was a picture of this guy, and he had a Ferrari and a yacht and a private jet and things like that. And it seemed like, you know, this idyllic life. So I said, I'm going to be a stockbroker, which was stupid, because I'm terrible at maths and I had no qualifications or anything like that. But I went into the city with my CV, which had nothing on it, and just sat in loads of the waiting rooms, like JP Morgan and places like that, waiting for someone to give me a job. And one company took pity on me, and they gave me a job as a trainee broker. And so for the next few years, I spent kind of all day working in the stock market, and then all night client entertaining in strip clubs and things like that, which for a young man was like, it was quite fun. There's a strip club, I shouldn't tell this story, but there's a strip club in London called Stringfellows, which is a really famous strip club. And I was there so much that I became really good friends with all of the dancers, and they came to my wedding. So, yeah,
That's amazing.
Yeah, so they were.
Are you still in touch with them?
Yeah, they're still my good friends now.
That's awesome.
I am, but they're just great. And but that was the life I had. So it'd be like 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I'd just be hanging out there. And it takes a toll, you know, because I'm not great with drink and drugs and things like that. And it kind of goes hand in hand with that 80s Wall Street thing, you know, it's like the Gordon Gekko thing. So I was doing okay, and then I got a job on a trading desk, and my boss said to me, if you lose $10,000, you stop trading, and that was the rule. That was my limit. That was kind of the only rule, and I came in the next day and lost $2 million fairly quickly, like within a few hours. And my friend worked in the back office, so I said to my friend, let's keep it quiet, which is illegal. And I'll make it back, which I couldn't do, obviously. So probably a month went by, a really stressful month, where I was just losing a bit more. And then I came into work one morning, and we had this big office in London, and there was like a big glass boardroom, and there were all the lawyers were there, and the partners and directors and people like that. And there was just an empty seat at the end of the table for me. So I came in and sat down, and obviously everything came out. And I'd started to make money again, and they took pity on me for a second time, and they said, if you agree to pay back half of it yourself, we won't go to the police. So I signed a contract there and then, and remember riding the train home that night in $1 million of debt, and I was 24 at the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was engaged and didn't tell my fiance, and she was because I had this image, you know, I was doing really well. My parents didn't have to worry about me, you know, I turned out okay. And she was planning a very expensive wedding, because, you know, everyone thought I was making loads of money. So I just said nothing and put it all on a credit card, or a series of credit cards, and I racked up some serious debt. And then I you know, I slipped again and was drinking too much, and was back exactly where I was, right where I'd been stabbed, you know, mentally. So I went back to Montana, to Duchess, and sat down and wrote some more. And so for the second time in my life, she kind of pulled me out of it, this character, and just writing. And I paid the money back. And it took a few years working really hard, and I paid it back and got myself out of debt. And then read a book called The Last Child by John Hart. I don't know if anyone's read it. It's a brilliant, brilliant book. It's kind of a thriller, but it's beautifully written. And I read it, and I was really inspired by it. And then I read an interview with John Hart, and he was a lawyer, a successful lawyer, and he wasn't happy, so he just quit to become a writer. So my boss, I was nearly 30. My wife was pregnant and a student, so we had no other income. And my boss called me into his office and offered me a promotion, and I quit there and then, because I wanted to be a writer. And then I got home and kind of said to my wife, surprise, I'm going to buy a book. You know, we have no income anymore. So that was a difficult conversation. And I think she knew that I wasn't happy, because she was okay. You know, she was so supportive, and we sold our apartment, and we sold our car, and life changed massively. And then I got into writing, and I wrote 2 books. I wrote a book called Tall Oaks and a book called All the Wicked Girls. And then every time I logged into my computer, there was a file marked Duchess, and it felt like unfinished business. But it had been so long, and I didn't know if I wanted to write the book. And then I told my editor that I would write it, and that I'd deliver it in 6 months. And then 3 years later, they got a first draft of it, and it just went on and on forever. And that is a very long answer to your question, isn't it? So that's my road into writing.
That's fantastic, though. Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's such a great story that, you know, just goes to show life isn't always what you think it's going to be.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, that was a really incredible story. And when Katey had researched and told me about that article, she had mentioned, you know, how writing kind of took you out of some of those hard times, but I didn't realize or know that it was specifically Duchess scenes, essentially. And one of our followers, Aaron Talks Books, wanted to know how hard it was to write in the voice of either an adolescent or a girl. Is there a specific reason why that was the specific voice you went to, or? why
So
for that?
yeah, so I said it in the US because I mentioned before that my parents split up and I was really close with my dad, and all of a sudden he wasn't around, and it was quite hard. You know, I was a young boy. And then he took me and my brother to Disney World, and we got talking to this family in front of us from Montana, and they painted this like picture of it like as the most beautiful place on earth. And one of them, the man said it was like switching from portrait to landscape, which is a line that ends up in the book. And when I was doing that writing exercise after I was stabbed, it said to change the location to somewhere you were last happy. So I thought, you know, being 19, I went right back to when I was a kid to the US, you know, and it became my safe place and my happy place. So that was why. But as for Duchess, I wanted to write someone having a harder time than me, you know, so I was projecting. So I made her quite small and quite vulnerable, but still tough and very angry. And I didn't, because it wasn't supposed to be a book and no one was ever supposed to read it, I didn't I didn't get hung up on it. You know, I wasn't that far away in age from her at the time when I started writing it. So when I went back to it, I kept the same style that I'd written in, and I didn't overthink it until later. Until I spent a year writing Duchess's dialogue, a solid year, just writing and rewriting and changing it until it felt right. And then I found a website where you can listen to people speak, which is as boring as it sounds, but you can find someone of the right age from the right town and listen to them read a transcript and then pick up on speech patterns and things like that. So I drove myself mad for a year doing that. And eventually it clicked, you know, and she just felt, I'm just a strong believer in gut feeling, you know, if it feels right, then I'll go with it and I'll give it my best. And then if it comes out and people don't like it, I will have done absolutely everything I can. So there can be no regrets.
That's so cool. Do you have any other, like, just hidden character files of just random scenes or anything, or is that the only one?
Oh no, there's like I would have written, so say the book is 100,000 words, there will be about 500,000 words of that book. There's a lot. There's like characters like Thomas Noble will have their own story before I know them well enough to just put in there what people see as bit parts in the final story.
I love Thomas Noble so much. I just have to get that out.
Do you have any plans to get any of them like published or out there with those stories, or?
I don't. It's taken like nearly 20 years to finish this book, and it was only ever supposed to be a snapshot of a year in the life of Duchess and Walk and those characters, and then I'd move on. And I'm getting asked about it, you know, writing a sequel and things like that, and I think I would do it for the wrong reasons, so I just won't do it.
That's
you know, I never say never, but not now. Definitely not now.
Okay.
Very cool. Well, so spoiler alert to anybody that's in here that hasn't finished the book, you might want to mute for just a second. But in the end, we find out that Duchess wasn't an outlaw and Robin wasn't really a prince. We find out their father was Vincent. Seeing as this is a story now that we've learned has unfolded over 20 years, was it always planned that Vincent was going to be their father?
Yeah, as soon as I wrote him, yes. Yeah, so I knew it. But Robin is kind of a prince because Vincent is Vincent King, and that's why Starr calls him a prince, which no one ever gets. So don't worry, I'm the only one that's ever got that because I wrote it.
My mind is just blown right now.
It's an obscure one. It really is. But no, I knew how it was going to end. I knew that much. How I would get there, you know, took many years and was still up for grabs when I was writing. And I don't write in any order, so I sit down and write whatever I feel like writing on the day. So I can, you know, write something. So I'm writing the new book now, and I will write a scene that won't appear in it until page 300, and I'm just beginning. So yeah, I end up in a mess at the end of it. There's a better way to do it. I just haven't discovered it yet.
Yeah, well, if that works for you, go for it. Keep doing it. I'm just always curious to see if that's how the book was initially supposed to end. So I typically like to ask those questions, but that's awesome that you knew from the beginning.
Yeah, I more knew that Duchess was going to leave Robin at the end, you know, and she, because at the start her mum says to her that selfless acts are what make a good person, and it's the only thing that really sticks with her, and she spends the whole book looking for this selfless act, and I wanted her to find it.
Awesome. So then, based on like your mood writing and all that kind of thing, but also being planned, what about the title? And like it's repeated multiple times in the book. So like what does it mean to you? When did you know that would be the title? And
So I didn't really, because my first two books I'd given them titles, and then the sales department get involved and change the title. So, and I used to spend too long thinking about it, and there's a lot at work, isn't there, with the title? You know, there's a bigger picture with marketing and sales and things that I'm not concerned about at that point. But there's kind of a prologue at the beginning, you know, with the death of a child, and I called that bit "We Begin at the End," and they pulled that out, which was nice, which was kind of fortuitous, because I wanted it to be called "We Begin at the End." But to me, it's because the book does begin at the end for these characters. You know, we skip ahead 30 years and we find out that Walk is still acts like he's 15. You know, he's still being called Walk, even though he's the chief of police. He's got his childhood nickname, and he's still looking back over his shoulder and trying to preserve this town. You know, he won't let anyone build on it, and he wants it to stay exactly as it was back when he was last happy. And then you've got Star, whose life never recovered, and Vincent, who's the same, and then Duchess, who was born a long time after the event, but she can't outrun it either. She was like born under this shadow. And so we are beginning at the end of these characters, you know, of their journey, or what feels like that, and whether they can outrun it or not is something that I explore as the book goes on. But there's also a religious kind of connotation, which is you know, how it's told by the priest when his daughter dies that we begin at the end, because that he hopes that Hal will draw some comfort from that. You know, if our lives now are just a dry run, a practice for what's coming, then, you know, there's less to fear, isn't there? And you know, grief is easier to accept if you're religious, if you believe in that, but Hal isn't, so he doesn't really draw anything from it.
I did appreciate Hal, and I don't know, there was something charming to me about how he went through the practices and traditions of religion, even if he didn't fully believe. I don't know, I just really liked that.
Yeah.
It was good stuff.
So going back to the memorable characters that we started off this conversation with a little bit ago, who's your favorite character to bring to life?
Well, that's a tough one. That's like saying who's your favorite child, which I could answer, just in case they watch it one day. Obviously, Duchess is, you know, been with me for a very long time, and I'll never forget that character. And I'll go back and, you know, I can pick up the book and pick out a scene, and I'll remember where I was when I wrote it, you know, mentally and physically where I was, you know, and it could be 10 years ago or something like that. So she's a special one. Thomas Noble, I think, you know, he was the most fun to write, because if some of the other characters like Vincent, you know, if they're drowning, Thomas Noble is like coming up for air, because you get to, and Thomas Noble lets you see Duchess as a teenager, and lets you, because it's easy to forget sometimes that she's a child, and you get to see her getting ready for prom and things like that, and you get glimpses of the girl that she might have been and the life she might have had, and you get those glimpses through Thomas Noble, and in his own right, you know, he's brave and tough, and yeah, I enjoyed writing him. How about you?
Mine was probably Thomas Noble for sure. I love that guy.
It's a tie between Thomas Noble and Dolly.
Yeah.
Okay, a Dolly fan. Yeah, I love Dolly, because Dolly gives you a sense that because of what she's been through, that if she's okay, then Duchess will be okay. You know, it's a bit like looking into the future.
She kind of took that maternal role for her, which was so much what she needed, even though she didn't know she needed it.
Yeah, and would never admit to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah, I don't think I'll ever forget Thomas Noble in that scene when he's ready to fight people for her. He tucks his pants into his socks.
Yeah, he does that. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a Thomas Noble move, that is.
okay. Oh man. So you've already touched on it a lot. Mitch Bookstagram wanted to know more specific on your writing process. Sounds like you did say you do it by mood, but how do you plan books around that, or make sure?
Yeah, so I used to give myself quite a strict word count, which doesn't really work because you end up writing any old crap just so that you hit your target and then you can stop writing for the day, and then I just rewrite it all anyway. So I now if I end up with a few hundred words that might make it into the final draft, then that's a good day of writing. So I'm just, yeah, and lockdown's been tough, hasn't it, and COVID, and it's been a distraction, and it's been, obviously devastating for a lot of people, but we've just it was just tough because the book was coming out in the UK and it published into lockdown when all the bookshops were shut, and the day before we locked down in the UK, the builders took the roof off of our house, and then couldn't put it back on again. And it was raining, so we just had pots and pans and things collecting rain, and my wife was pregnant and gave birth during lockdown to our daughter, and then I was gearing up for US publication as well, and we were homeschooling the kids, and so I'm looking forward to some normal time again, if that ever comes. It does feel like it's happening, doesn't it? I don't know about the US, but it does here, the more vaccines and things like that. It's slowly getting back to a new kind of normal.
Yeah, it definitely is. So speaking of the US, obviously the book is set in the United States, but we've noticed a lot of vivid descriptions about, especially, well, I hung on to the Colorado part because I love Colorado. We live in Colorado, and you actually wrote it pretty accurate as to where I've driven through there. It was really accurate, actually.
Thank you.
So is there a reason why the setting was in the United States?
Only just from what I mentioned earlier, about being at Disney and finding a place that I wanted to escape to when I was writing. So I would have a tough day in the city or something like that, and then mentally I could travel 4,000 miles to Montana, which felt like this big expanse of clear air, and somewhere where it's easier to escape and to imagine things. And I needed that. I needed the separation, and it's an amazing country. And I think Duchess is innately American. I think there's a toughness to her and a braveness, and she just feels like, and she's found a home there. That since we published there, the messages I get and the book clubs that I do and things like that, people get her in a way that I really wanted them to in the US, which is really nice.
That's fantastic. And I think it's amazing that you even went as far as to, research the dialect. And so often authors stick to what they know, like that you would have set it to where you live. But I think it's incredible and daring that you went out and did something that you weren't completely familiar with and still pulled it off incredibly well.
I had help though. I should mention, my editor in the US is Amy Einhorn, and she edited Big Little Lies and The Help and so many amazing books. And she because I'd finished writing it in the UK and I'd finished editing it, and I didn't really want them to publish it. And we'd spent years on it, and I kept saying, I don't think we should do it. I'll write something else. And then Amy got it in the US. And we had this conversation on the phone, and she just got it, and she just fixed everything I was worried about. And the team catch all my mistakes, my British things that I get wrong. So that they save me, and the proofreaders earn their money. They really do.
Yeah, overall it turned out so well. I was like, surely he's just writing this from his cabin in Montana.
Well, I had no idea that you didn't live in the United States until we contacted you, and I started looking into you about when we started recording our episode.
That's nice to hear. That's a compliment. Thank you.
So yeah, did awesome. So you had touched on how you haven't always wanted to be an author. Did you always love reading and books and at the
I
very
did.
okay.
Yeah, since I was way too young to be reading Stephen King. I used to steal Stephen King books because my dad had a Stephen King shelf that I wasn't allowed. You know, when you tell a kid they're not allowed to do something, and but I couldn't work it out because I didn't know that books could be so terrifying. You know, I didn't know they could make you feel, you know, such emotion. So I read it when I was 10, and I was terrified afterwards for ages, and then worked my way through the back catalogue, and I grew up in the library. You know, I was in there a lot, and now I work in the library, and I've just cut back my hours, but I don't want to give it up. But it's getting harder and harder with writing and things like that to balance everything. So I've dropped down to 1 day a week, but it doesn't feel like a job. You know, it kind of feels like you're going home when you go into a library. And I always feel like I could be friends with everyone in there. Like when I go into a bookstore, I just feel like I could be friends with them all.
That's so funny. Do you ever like get all sneaky and like talk to people about your book? And
yeah, it's not sneaky though. I overtly give them my book. You know, we went because we were locked down for so long. The library stayed open for you could get like a delivery service, and everyone got my book, no matter what they asked for. You know, they'd ask for romance and things like that, and they would get a copy of my book. Yeah, I do it. I have no shame when it comes to self-promotion. Yeah,
We get that. We get that. We push our podcast, so we get it.
exactly.
And I am like a huge Stephen King fan, so you just won me over even more with that, because I have a whole shelf downstairs dedicated to Stephen King. So
tell your
fantastic.
kids to read it.
Yeah, no. So yeah. So all right. Well, that's all the questions that we have. So we would like to open the floor up to everybody that's here to be able to ask anything that you'd like. What you could do, if you could just please hit the raise your hand button on the Zoom, and I will invite you to unmute, and then you can ask your question. And when you're done, just please remute yourself. So whoever has a question, go ahead.
See, we were so thorough that we've covered everything. Oh no, Erin has a question.
Hi. Hi,
Erin.
Chris. I'm in the UK as well. I didn't realise that you were in the UK too. So I'm having a late night tonight, which is you know, work tomorrow. My son's asleep on the couch because I was desperate not to miss it. So I'm being a terrible mum. Oh, I'm in Northamptonshire, so not very far from London, if that's where you are.
I'm just outside of London, yeah.
Right, yeah, I really miss London. I'm going back next week for the first time in 18 months, and I will be hitting a bookshop, but I've already got your book.
Thank you.
Which I thought was beautifully written. I really, really enjoyed it. I had no idea that you were based in the UK, as some of the other ladies have said this evening. Have you ever been to Montana?
I haven't, no. I've been.
That's amazing. It's amazing that you haven't been.
Yeah, I want to go. It's on my list, but I do endless research, and working in a library helps, you know, so I spend half my life looking at maps and reading travel guides and reading fiction and non-fiction set in the places that I want to write about. And then, as I said, the American team helped massively. But yeah, it's I just got lucky with a lot of it. Like there's a drive that Hal does, you know, where he goes from California to Montana, and someone had done that exact route and filmed it and sped it up on YouTube, so you can see the route that he takes. And yeah, it's research is easier now, isn't it? Thanks to the internet. I don't know how they did
absolutely.
it beforehand.
Yeah. I think it's testament to your research that we would all just assume that you lived in Montana and that was your life. So yeah, I just thought the book was beautiful, and I loved Duchess. She was my favorite, and her, you know, I'm an outlaw. I think I can start saying that to myself now when I, you know, in a difficult situation at work or something, I can channel Duchess. But yeah, no, I just thought it was lovely. Really, really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Erin.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I'll go. I have more.
Okay.
So we touched so briefly before we let everyone in, and I didn't know beforehand that Disney has the rights to this book.
Mhm. Yeah, so I had this really mad week where I was working at the library in the day and then meeting with Hollywood studios in the evening, which was, it's an unusual week for me. That was surreal. But Disney they just got the book and got Duchess in a way that I wanted them to. And I said before that it's Tommy Kail that will produce it, and he directed Hamilton, and I'm a big Hamilton fan. And I just thought that was a masterpiece, Hamilton. It's so good, isn't it? And so I feel like I'm in safe hands with them. But we're at the early stages, so they're finding a writer at the moment, making a short list, but people like to send me their suggestions for the cast, which I like as well. Yeah.
Can you talk about dream casting at all? Like who you would have play them? I know a lot of authors are under tight lock and key.
No, so I can't ever name anyone because they are my characters that I've lived with forever. But so people have sent Ed Harris for Hal or Clint Eastwood, which I like. Duchess is a difficult one. There's a couple of actresses, young actresses. There's one in particular called Shiloh. I think I'm pronouncing it right, Berico. And she read the book with her mum, and she's only 11. And she there's a video on her Instagram of her playing guitar and singing, and she's so good, and she has a Duchess vibe to her. So she would be a good Duchess. But I get loads for Walk. We get the the policeman in Stranger Things.
Oh yeah, he would be good.
So I get, he's the one that comes up most for Walk, but yeah, I just can't do it. I'm glad I will have nothing to do with it.
And is it going to be a movie?
No, it will be a series.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Man, now all I'm thinking about is casting, because I didn't even know about this before we started talking, before we let everybody in. So now I'm like, who's gonna play who? It's gonna be,
it'll be very
really cool to see.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, please do. So can you talk about what your next book is about and when that's coming out?
So I have a YA book, a young adult book that comes out in 2 weeks in the UK. So I think a year later in the US, but the new adult book will be spring 2023 if I finish it. That's a big if. And it's a big kind of love story, mystery, crime novel that spans 3 decades in the US. So it's ambitious. So, yeah.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. So, well, we have to wait a year to get it over here, but
you have friends in the UK.
Yeah, we do.
No, that one will come out at the same time in the UK and US.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, it's just the teenage one, right?
Well, wonderful. Any other questions, anybody?
Yeah.
I have a question. So I'm Claire. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. So right around where Dolly Parton's from. So loved the reference that Dolly made to Dolly Parton in the book. I'm always just so curious how like other people that aren't from Tennessee, like, I mean, I know Dolly's really famous, but like you not being from the United States, like how in the world do you know about Dolly Parton, and like, is she super famous over there too?
Super famous. Super famous. She is a global star.
We have Dollywood like here, just 40
I've heard
minutes
of
from
Dollywood.
my house. Like, I mean, Dolly is a queen. Anywhere in Knoxville you go, like she's spray painted on sides of buildings. Like Dolly is queen here. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, Dolly. There you go.
There's Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she's mega famous, and I could listen to you talk all night, Claire. I like your accent. It's very cool.
Well, thank you. I always feel like I don't have one, but you know, I guess we just don't hear it in ourselves.
Yeah, I don't think I have one. I used to think I was really posh as well. I genuinely thought I was, and then one of my friends told me that I wasn't posh, and it was really hard to take. Genuinely, I was upset.
You'd probably fit in an Aspen just fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm heading there.
They wouldn't kick you out.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I might be the only one from Canada in here. I don't know. Are any other Canadians? No. Okay, so representing Canada. I I was thinking too that if we were to put in an order to Chris's library, perhaps he could send us one of his new books in there too, right? Just like he did the other novel. The question I had is about Vincent, actually. Did you always plan that to be Vincent's ending? Because there were little glimpses of time. I mean, he was such a silent character because of the, I guess, you know, he just continued to punish himself for what had happened when he was younger. But I felt that once he was a little bit part of the lives of his children, was that always his intention? Like, that was, you talking about a selfless act, and his act was very selfless because he had, you know, desire to leave a legacy, I guess, for his children. But there was glimpses of times in the book where I thought he could have made a connection with Duchess. And was that always?
It was, I don't think he thought he deserved to make any kind of impact on anyone's life. You know, he just wanted to keep his head down and leave them this house so that they'd be looked after. But he didn't want them to know that he was their father because he feels unworthy of that role. You know, and I did a lot of research into people that commit those kind of crimes, you know, whether they're accidental or not. And it's a difficult thing, isn't it? You know, the death of a child. I don't think it's something that you can get over, and he certainly can't in the book, and doesn't feel like he deserves to. But then on the flip side, you know, we're all more than the worst things that we've done. And, you know, the same is true of Dark in the book. You know, you think he's a bad character, although I don't like to use that word or that term. But I just think that the more time you spend with someone, the less able you should be to put them in a box. You know, we watch the news and see the worst thing that someone's likely to do in their life. We just get a snapshot of that, and we don't know the context or what's gone on before, and it doesn't change the event itself. Like, Vincent still caused the death at the start, but it might change the way we look at them, or we look at that, you know, the thing that they've done. But he just couldn't escape it. So yeah, I just I had that in my mind from the beginning, you know, that he just wouldn't recover, and, you know, and he could find some, you know, he gives something to Duchess, doesn't he? In his death, he stops her doing something that she won't be able to live with, because he knows what it's like to take a life. So yeah, but it wasn't an easy thing to write, I don't think. You know, when I was doing it, none of his character felt easy. You know, I felt like it was the right thing to do. He was just a mess, really.
Thanks.
We had kind of discussed on our podcast about Vincent's intentions and reasons for why he was covering for Robin. Was that, like, in my mind, how I liked it? I saw him how, you know, he obviously didn't mind getting in trouble and could feel himself deserving, you know, to be punished forever, obviously. But was it even more so from, like, how much love he felt from Robin, or, like, how do you feel he felt about that? Like, was he trying to protect him more mentally than
I think so. You know, he was coming at it from, you know, the same as with Duchess. You know, he's lived a life where he's done something terrible, and he knows what it's like to live with that, and he's going to shelter his own children from that. But I did a lot of research into that, into kids that witness things like that, and at Robin's age, that there is a chance that he won't remember it, you know, that, and Vincent kind of gives him that chance, you know, just takes it away by telling him, you didn't do anything, you know, it was me, and then he's free to move on with his life, and it's kind of a gift he can give him. And you always get the feeling with Vincent that there's a sense of relief, you know, that he's heading back to jail or whatever, you know, he just can't get on with his life, and he's being punished again and again. And he's okay with that.
Awesome. Annie, go ahead with your question.
Thank you. I have two. Am I allowed to ask two, or are you going to make me pick one?
You can ask two, Annie.
Excellent. My first is, I'm curious about your writing, like the tone and cadence of your writing. I found it to be just gorgeous, right? It was such a joy to read. Even the descriptions in your book, they were just so I mean, it was poetic, in my opinion. I'm wondering if it was deliberately set, or if this is a voice that you carry in your writing.
I think a bit of both. I think that when I'm reading, I tend to seek out books that, you know, I don't care about a plot or anything like that. If you give me a character that I care about and a beautiful sentence, that's a good book for me. You know, that's enough. But I stayed true to how I'd written it when I was 19. You know, when I went back and looked at these pieces of writing, they were quite blunt in their description. You know, I was just getting the facts down and things like that. So Duchess was written pretty much in a similar fashion. But then Walk, you get the long descriptions, you know, when he's driving somewhere and we get to see what he's seeing. And it's just really important that you feel like you're there, you know, when you're reading the book. To me, it's just the most important thing, that you can forget what's going on around you and, you know, be wholly absorbed by this story. And yeah, it's something I strive for. So I'm really pleased. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I loved it. It was, and I've told a million people, right, that one of the things that really grabbed me about your book is that I felt like I could see it, right? It was just so beautifully done. So second question. We've talked a lot about your characters. I loved your characters. The character development was solid. You could almost, like, the backstories were so well developed. But what I really, really loved about them was the relationships. Like the relationships that you developed. I mean, particularly for me, it was Duchess and Hal, right? That gradual softening, it broke my heart, put it back together. I thought it was beautiful. Wondering what your process is for creating those relationships, because I found it very unique in books.
Mm-hmm. It's a difficult one, actually, because my editor wanted something different in the UK. Wanted something different with Duchess and Hal. She wanted a faster kind of warming up from Duchess, and I didn't feel it was right. And I think it just came from doing a lot of research into kids like Duchess, and it's horribly common. You know, the kids that kind of get left behind and don't have a childhood and are forced to become carers, and she just has such a tough time, and she all of a sudden is introduced to this man that has had no, you know, part of her life, and who might have made it easier and helped her. And so she has, understandably, she's got this bitterness and anger towards him. And I got a message recently from someone who had adopted a daughter, it's now her daughter, who had a tough time like Duchess, and they went through the same thing, you know, where Duchess is warming up to Hal, is allowing him to make her a drink and leave it somewhere. So she will take it. And that's what this woman went through with her daughter, and it's still going through it many years later. And it's something I found when I was reading, you know, just how hard that is, you know, that it's more than having a tough exterior, you know, it's just an innate, you know, protection that you won't get anywhere near me. And that's what Duchess carries into that. And yeah, it just felt right when I was writing it. I said before about that feeling, and to do it any other way, you know, it might have been a better payoff for a reader, maybe, but it wouldn't have been true to the character.
I loved it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, then.
That is so awesome. Thank you for fighting for your characters and being authentic, and thanks for joining us and being our guest of honor. Thank you to everyone who was able to attend. Make sure you follow Chris on Instagram, Chris Whitaker author. He's active on there. If you've posted about his book, he's probably thanked you because he's awesome like that. And so I appreciate that. And thank you for your engagement. Truly, it's really nice as little reviewers to feel like to connect with authors, and thanks for meeting with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's just fun, isn't it? It's just I get to talk about my book with people that have read the book. It's really it's a nice way to spend a Thursday evening. So thank you, Beth.
Yeah. So we're gonna plug our podcast now. Just be sure to follow The Lost Chill on Instagram if you don't already. And then all of our episodes are available on your favorite podcast app, including this week's episode, which is about We Begin at the End. New episodes come out every Tuesday, and check our social media for other chats and giveaways that we have going on.
Yes, and now if everyone could grab your copy of the book and hold it up, I will take a picture. Let me switch to gallery.
Yeah, I'm trying to get everybody situated. There we go. You should be good now.
Where's your book?
It's coming.
Oh. All right, ready? Perfect. Let me do one more just to be safe. Sorry. All right, thanks so much. And we'll get that on social media hopefully pretty soon here.
Yeah, so last time we posted it in the Instagram chat before we actually posted it on our social media. So just be sure that you check there. And then if you want to post it, just make sure that you tag us and Chris as well, so we can all join in on the fun.
Yes, thank you so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your night.
All right, thanks Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks
Goodbye.
so much.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.